Everybody, video here for you today. Finish off April the way I started it, making videos with that silly April 1st video I did. But today we are going to recover a story that we covered a few weeks ago. We're going to go back down to Pyramid Lake. I was going to include this originally in my Lake Winnemucca video I did a few weeks ago. Just to review, here is the dry Lake Winnemucca, and then this is Pyramid Lake down here. But there is another story here that I'd like to cover today. 1968, there was some finds made right down here. This is called Wizard's Cove. These are the needles right down here, but a discovery made here about 52 years ago. Just a quick review of Pyramid Lake. Here is why they call it Pyramid Lake. This is a pic from over 150 years ago. This lake has always been sacred to the people living around it, especially the Paiutes. History here goes back thousands of years. Here's a drawing coming from 1844. John Fremont is the one who gets credit for exploring this place first, shown right here. And of course, John Fremont is best known for having Fremont Street named after him. Here's a pic, my last time down on Fremont Street, middle of February, meeting a friend from Kansas City, longtime sub here, Katrinka. Pyramid Lake was also used as a setting in the greatest story ever told, a 1960s movie about Jesus. And I think in my video a couple weeks ago, I said scenes that were supposed to be at the Dead Sea were filmed at Pyramid Lake, but actually it's the Sea of Galilee. That's what Pyramid Lake was a stand-in for. Here's Wizard's Cove right here, Monument Rock. The needles are right there. I'll show those in a second, but drought in 1968 exposed some shoreline here. Here is what is called the Needles Rock Formations at the north end of the lake where the remains were found about 52 years ago. You really get a good idea here on Google Earth of the ancient shorelines, also where water once was and once flowed. The needles right there. Guy was walking 52 years ago. He had some experience in anthropology, I guess, or archaeology. Right down here, made a find. Just read. I will leave this link below, a good PDF, excellent. University of Nevada, Reno, the Wizard Beach Men, a study in contrast from Pyramid Lake, Nevada. Here it says, in February 1968, a low shoreline was exposed on Pyramid Lake due to drought. Peter Ting, an avocational archaeologist, discovered human remains on the surface in the Needles area of the lake at approximate elevation of 1,156 meters, at about 110 meters southeast of the shoreline, and 275 meters west of the Needles Rocks. Robert Stevenson, director of the Nevada Archaeological Survey, went to record and collect the remains. The site was assigned a certain number, and Stevenson recorded 3 separate sets of remains on the beach. He photographed the remains, noted what elements were present, and observed what they were on the surface where looting was possible. Stevenson did not excavate the shoreline for other remains and collected only bones lying on the surface. Here is the cranium of Wizard Beach Man number 1, over 10,000 years old. It was partially buried in the sand. That's why the 2 distinct colors, I guess. But they describe this guy as being about 5 feet 8 inches tall. The cranium, they describe it as dolichocephalic, which means longer than usual. Here is a look at the cranium and mandible from the left side. His skull was described by the initial people as being robust, though they say he was maybe only 5 feet 8 inches tall. He had a cranial fracture in the front, and they thought he might have fallen or suffered a break or been attacked and pushed in the lake to drown. Though I'm pretty sure it's hard to determine the cause of death coming from over 10,000 years ago. Only assumptions can be made, but here's a top look at the skull here. And they say this guy had no artifacts around him, though they found 1 small piece of carved stone that they said could be an effigy. Just reading here, this abbreviation is Wizard Beach Man number 1. It says his cranium had been partially buried along the sagittal plane, as evidenced by the bands of black to brown on the right side, with the left side bleached to a light color. This stripping on the cranium is caused by manganese in Pyramid Lake. The cranium has been described as robust, a good morphometric match to either East Asian populations or North American natives. This PDF was just an excellent source of information. We do not have a lot of burials coming from over 10,000 years ago. We just don't have a lot of stuff to go on. So anything is important here. Here are some of the bones. Bowing was described in some of the femur bones here. This PDF had a lot of good information. It did comparative studies on the skulls and teeth. And it says, it is obvious that no early American skull derives from a contemporary population, regardless of how similar it may be. And it just goes into the lack of skeletons coming from the Great Basin area in this time period we're talking about way back in history. Just not a lot of comparative studies to do based on lack of skeletons. Also, the partial remains, what they say is Wizard Beach Man number 2 was also found here. He is maybe 7,000 years old. 2 distinct periods of history, 2 separate remains found in the same area. Looking back 15,000 years ago, northern Nevada, northwestern Utah, southern Oregon, just covered with massive lakes here. The paper says Utah juniper was growing in the region and then disappeared at 12,200 years ago, right in the middle of the Younger Dryas period. Not only were megafauna disappearing and Clovis people kind of disappearing, but trees that once grew in the area totally disappeared. I will leave this link below. I learned a lot about Pyramid Lake, other remains found, geology. I learned a lot in this PDF, so I'll leave the link below in case any of you want to check it out. I'm working on some longer videos, but I just wanted to document this one. Remains coming from 10,000 years ago are not that prevalent in the studies of early America. I have talked about the Lovelock Cave mummies and the Spirit Lake mummy. Well, here is another very early set of remains coming from Nevada. Not a lot of people know about that one, or less people that know about those other stories, so that's why I wanted to document it. Ancient America coming from my home state, Nevada. Hope you thought that was cool, and you all have a very safe day.